Hello, my amazing people, and welcome back to my channel. If you're back, if you're new, welcome to my channel. I'm Shayna, and I have another case for you all today. This one is wild. When I first heard about it, I could not believe my ears, and you will understand why in a few minutes. Just my usual disclaimer, this is all information that I found online and compiled into a video for educational purposes. Thank you so much for joining me today, and let's get started. Sheila Von Weiss was born in 1952 in Minneapolis and was an astoundingly kind and intelligent woman. She had a brother and a sister, and in her young adult years, she studied political science in Boston before moving to St. Louis to pursue her MBA. After reaching this achievement, Sheila worked for some years at a publishing company called Doubleday, where she worked as an editor. Eventually, Sheila would go on to meet and marry a man by the name James L. Mack, and James was known because he was a talented and very popular composer and producer during his life. The careers that the two of them had allowed them to live a very comfortable life, and now Mrs. Von Weiss Mack, Sheila was excited to start the rest of her life with her new husband. The couple resided in Oak Park, Illinois, which is a very affluent area known to be home to many wealthy people, and they lived in a gorgeous $1.5 million home, and they indulged in all the finer things in life. Their life was very comfortable, very high class, and the two of them together were a great duo. They enjoyed a life of luxury together. They were into the same things. They both really loved music and traveling. So they spent many vacations together and enjoyed their pastimes hosting concerts in their backyard. The cherry on top for the couple came along when Sheila realized that the two of them would be expecting a daughter in 1995. Lois Heather Mack was born, and the family could not have been happier. As Lois grew up, she actually started to go by Heather, and Sheila was so excited about her pregnancy and her daughter coming into the world because by the time she actually had Heather, she was in her 40s. So she didn't know if she ever would have children, and this was her miracle baby. This is everything that she had ever wanted. So Sheila really doted on Heather and poured love into her. She adored Heather and would do absolutely anything for her. Heather's relationship with James was similar. She had him wrapped around her little finger, and she was daddy's girl all the way. Their family was so perfect because the parents were so excited to have Heather, and they literally could give her anything she wanted, not just material things, but also all the love that a child needs. And Heather was this beautiful and smart little girl, and everything just seemed to be way too perfect in the family. As she got older, Heather was an extremely happy child. She was always smiling, always laughing, had no cares in the world, and she really had everything that she could ever ask for. The family enjoyed taking vacations. When Sheila and James were married, before they had Heather, they went on vacations multiple times a year, and this did not stop when Heather was born. The three of them would travel to many different exotic locations every single chance they got, and before the age of just 10 years old, Heather was able to see more of the world than many of us ever will. In a very sad turn of events, James, who actually had colon cancer at the time, passed away on a family trip to Greece. He suffered a pulmonary embolism, which came as a surprise to everyone. Heather was still 10 years old, and Sheila wasn't expecting to lose her husband so soon, but Sheila and Heather had to return back to the US by themselves and figure out what life would look like without James. From the moment she lost her father, Heather changed. Something shifted in her, and Sheila didn't know exactly what it was from the beginning because Heather was still so young, but as she progressed through middle school, she became more and more defiant of Sheila, and she wasn't following direction. She started to get this vicious attitude, and the loss of her father, I think, really struck her in a way that manifested in her being angry and having outbursts with everyone in her life, namely her mother. It started with Heather doing things like talking back or not doing her chores, and it progressed to her being downright disrespectful to her mother. And Sheila knew that Heather was processing a lot in the years after James had passed away, but she never expected for it to escalate as aggressively as it did, and it turned bad really quick. Heather began hanging out with the wrong crowd during the transition from middle school to high school, and with this friend group, she would constantly skip school. I mean, no matter what Sheila did, she could not get Heather to go and stay at school. Sheila would do everything that she could possibly think of, but Heather would always end up playing hooky with her friends, and she was drinking and doing drugs and just behaving really erratically for her young age. And as things started to escalate, they really went downhill fast. Heather stole thousands of dollars from her mother, and Sheila would always figure it out every time if Heather had stolen one of her credit cards or taken one of her credit card numbers. But she didn't know how to properly discipline Heather for these things, because Heather became what you could basically describe as a competitor with her own mother. So Sheila was fighting for power in her own house, and Heather seemed like she would come out on top every single time. And to most people, the dynamic between a mother and a child would never evolve this far, right? It would never get to that place, but it did. Heather found a way to have the upper hand in their mother-daughter relationship every time, and Sheila was being treated like she was the child in the relationship. Heather would also say really hurtful and disrespectful things to her mother, and it even got to the point where Heather was putting her hands on Sheila. She would bite her, she would hit her and leave bruises on her. I mean, at the slightest inconvenience, Heather would lose her mind and just go bananas. Sheila did not know what to do. She would talk to her friends and her siblings and tell them, "I don't know what to do, I need help." Sheila felt lost and confused, and constantly like she was trying to maintain the relationship between her and her daughter, but also establish some sort of boundaries and discipline in her daughter. And it was like this defeating cycle where she would feel like she would fall flat on her face every single time. And it even got bad enough to the point where Heather pushed her mom so hard that Sheila fell and broke an arm. You guys, I mean, it was bad in this household. And Heather was like this beautiful and cute looking girl that you would never expect to be as malicious and manipulative and just vicious as she was, but she really would make Sheila feel like a prisoner in her own home. And the police were actually called out to this household over 80 times between the years of when James passed away to Heather being an adult. And it was that bad. Over 80 times Sheila would call the police asking them to please help them figure out something. But she loved her daughter so much, she never wanted to press charges against Heather. She always wanted to do anything she could to just maintain some sort of integrity in their relationship. She was grasping at any sort of dignity in maintaining this mother-daughter relationship, hoping that Heather would come around one day and see that Sheila was trying, that she was really trying, and that she didn't want to give her daughter away. She didn't want to send her away or have her go into juvie. That's not what Sheila wanted. But Heather just didn't see it that way. She saw her mother as the enemy. And every time something bad would happen, but Sheila would forgive Heather, it almost seemed like it added fuel to the fire, that Heather realized she could get away with pushing another boundary and then another boundary and then another boundary, and she will always look for the next one. So after this incident, when Heather broke Sheila's arm, and Sheila didn't press charges against her, even though Heather was arrested, this was another example of Heather finding a boundary that she could push. In high school, Heather met a man named Tommy Schaefer. Tommy Schaefer was from Chicago as well, which is not far from where Heather lived, but he had a very different upbringing than Heather. He went by the stage name Tommy X actually, and enjoyed making music. He considered himself an artist and would release different songs and things on YouTube. He had dreams of going down in history as a famous artist and seemed to be really serious about this when he was about 21 years of age at the time that he met Heather. Because he was putting so much time and energy into his music career that hadn't quite taken off yet, he didn't have much money because he didn't have a steady job, and he would spend most of his nights couch surfing between his different friends' homes, and over time, he actually started to lose his friend group. They would start to fall off one by one by one because they were sick of housing him when he wouldn't get his own life together. And he also was a habitual liar, and people in his life started to notice that he would exaggerate the truth, or he would tell white lies that were completely unnecessary. You know, that person that lies about things that are just so uncalled for, like unprompted. They just start telling tall tales that you never even asked them for. That's the kind of person that Tommy was, and his friends grew sick of him. So as they started to fall off from his life, he became closer and closer to Heather because the two of them pretty much only had each other, and they were in a relationship, and the two of them would spend a ton of time together. Heather would continue to skip school to spend time with Tommy, and they would go to parties together. They would drink and do drugs together. I don't know if I need to say this, but Sheila was not a fan of Tommy. She wasn't a fan of him. Heather was still in high school when she met him, and even though she was coming up on the end of high school, Sheila just wanted Heather to focus on finishing school. Tommy was in his 20s at this point, and Sheila just wanted Heather to stay focused. And she had been fighting with Heather literally for so long to keep her on track that she had gotten this close to the end. She didn't want her to lose sight because of a boy in her life. But Heather would sneak around with Tommy. She would go behind her mom's back and spend time with him, which is not surprising, and the two of them seemed to be absolutely crazy about each other. It came as a surprise to everyone when Heather found that she was pregnant with Tommy's child and that the two of them were going to be having a daughter, and Sheila was very defeated by this. She had felt like, look, I've tried everything. I'm throwing in the towel. I'm waving the white flag. I'm tired. And she hadn't given up on Heather, but she was just exhausted from the years of literal torment from her child. And now that she was pregnant, she was just thinking of it from a rational perspective, right? You have no form of income, and you are emotionally immature to the point where you inflict physical violence on your own mother. Tommy also has no steady form of income, and he's also very immature in his own way. And this is the way that Sheila was thinking, and she was just like, there could not have been a worse thing to happen for this future child. It reminds me of this meme right here. It's not a funny situation, but it's just what came to mind. So Sheila was hanging on by a thread at this point, but she spent some time, she thought about it, and she decided the relationship that I have with Heather and with my future grandchild is more important than any way that I feel or about my opinion on if she's ready or not. It's not about that. So Sheila actually came up with an idea for she and Heather to have a getaway, go on a girls trip, and not any old girls trip, okay? They actually had a trip booked to go to Bali, which is an absolutely incredibly beautiful place. Sheila booked $10,000 flight seats for the two of them. They flew first class over there. They stayed in a hotel called the St. Regis, which ran them $1,000 a night. No, not ran them, ran Sheila $1,000 a night. And the idea of this vacation wasn't just to go and spend all the money in the world. Even though Sheila was in a position where she had it, she still had all the money from her husband and she was successful herself. So spending the money wasn't a big deal, really. But the idea of the trip was to get far away from home. And it was for Heather's benefit. She wanted Heather to have time where she could be just with Sheila, where Heather could get some alone time, relax on the beach, dance, listen to music, be happy and carefree for some time, and get away from the people who had been kind of influencing her in the past few years. And this would give Heather some alone time with her thoughts and maybe an opportunity to process this pregnancy and think about what she wanted to do to become a responsible mother. And in addition to that, Sheila really had hopes that the two of them could work on their relationship. Their getaway was not just a week, it was going to be weeks that they were going to be there. And Sheila was excited because she would have time uninterrupted with her daughter. Heather couldn't run away or steal her money and leave. She had to be there and spend time with Sheila. And in Sheila's mind, this was her last ditch effort at saving their relationship. She still had this idealistic image in her mind of a mother and daughter relationship where they could laugh together and spend time together. And the image of her daughter being this kind and loving person never left her sights. So Sheila was just excited because this was going to be, first of all, an incredible, beautiful vacation, as it was, whether they fixed things or not. But she was also looking forward to fixing their relationship and giving Heather time to really think about things without the outside distractions of her negative influence. When the two landed in Bali, things were going well. Heather had come around to the idea of this getaway, and she and Sheila were frolicking on the beach and dancing and drinking pina coladas, singing and smiling and wearing matching outfits. I mean, it was a beautiful vacation and they seemed to be so happy. Heather was smiling from ear to ear. She was laughing and joking with her mom, and things were going pretty well. They did have a couple arguments throughout the course of a vacation. Even the happiest of people have arguments on vacations. I think we've all been there. But for the most part, things were going like leaps and bounds better than they were back home. And Sheila was feeling really, really good about it. But you know this wouldn't be sunny shade V if things didn't take a turn for the worst. Less than 2 weeks into their trip, Sheila was blindsided and angry when she realized that Tommy was also in Bali. She was surprised when Tommy pulled up at the resort and Heather hadn't told her that he was coming. She had no idea because he wasn't invited. And he also had no money. So Sheila was just confused and mad. And like, this was an opportunity for me and you to be together. So why is Tommy here? And how did he get here? That is when Sheila checked her credit card statement and saw that Heather had booked Tommy a $12,000 flight, flew him first class to Bali as well with Sheila's credit card. And when she was thinking about, okay, so where is he staying? She went down to the front desk of the hotel. They let her know that Tommy was checked into his own personal suite on Sheila's credit card. So Heather had masterminded clearly this entire thing of flying Tommy out without telling Sheila, which seems to be totally counterintuitive because you know she's going to find out. It's going to destroy the rest of the trip. There's almost no point in bringing him there because pretty much the only enjoyment he's going to get is flying there, because once he's there, Sheila's not having any of this. So Heather went behind her mom's back, stole her credit card, funded Tommy's very expensive flight and his hotel suite. So as you might imagine, things didn't go very smoothly on this day when Tommy landed in Bali. They actually got into an argument in the hotel lobby, and Sheila was like, look, I'm not dealing with this. And she went to her hotel room. She told Heather, let's go. You are coming with me. Don't even think about going to his room. So the two of them went to their room and Tommy went to his. 11 hours after Tommy landed in Bali, he and Heather made their way down to the hotel lobby and out to the front to flag down a taxi. And the taxi driver came over, greeted them, said, how you doing? I'll be happy to take you wherever you need to go. And Heather and Tommy placed a silver suitcase in the trunk of the taxi. And they actually said, wait, hold up. We forgot something. We'll be right back. Taxi driver said, no problem. I'll wait right here. After patiently waiting for the couple for 30 minutes, the taxi driver said, okay, well, maybe they must have forgot or had a change of plans or something, and he needed to take other people in his taxi who had places to go. So he popped the trunk and grabbed the suitcase out of the trunk to place it back on the curb, thinking that Tommy and Heather, the young couple that he had just met, would come back to get it when they remembered that it was down there. When removing the suitcase from the trunk, the taxi driver realized that there were like red smudges on the side of it. And he's looking at the bag. He's like, oh goodness, what is that? And he also looks at the trunk of his car and he sees that there's this same red smudgy kind of stuff on the metal rim around his trunk. And he's like, okay, this is weird. I don't know what's going on. So he goes into the hotel. He says, look, I think we should probably call the police because I do not know what is in this suitcase. When police arrived on the scene, they realized that inside the suitcase were in fact the remains of a woman. And the taxi driver was trying to be of help any way that he could, but he hadn't gotten the names of the two people who came down to give him the suitcase. So police watched the hotel lobby CCTV and compared the camera footage and the guest list with the woman that was in the suitcase, and they realized that this was, in fact, the body of Sheila von Weist Mack. Sheila was in bad condition, with a very large portion of her injuries being on her face and her head, and it was actually concluded through an autopsy that she passed away from asphyxiation. The injuries to her face, essentially what they did was obstruct her nasal and mouth area to the point where she couldn't breathe through the severity of the injuries. It didn't take police very long to track down Tommy and Heather. The duo had checked into a hotel that was much cheaper and was only a mile away from the St. Regis Hotel. They weren't far at all, and they actually were on the hotel staff's radar when they first got there because they checked in with no luggage, and that's not ever seen at hotels like this. So they were being looked at kind of funny when they first got there, and the dots were connected, the police were contacted, and the two of them were found in a hotel room. So police detained and questioned the two of them, trying to get to the bottom of what happened, and they had their story ready. They said that an armed gang attacked them, kidnapped them, and let the two of them go, but kept Sheila, and they don't know what exactly could have happened. And the police were listening to what they said, but they knew the area that they were in. I mean, they were in a gated hotel community where armed gangs simply aren't frequenting. Police wanted to look into things, so they launched an investigation into the passing of Sheila and started digging into Heather and Tommy. What police found on the duo's phones was blatantly incriminating. I mean, there were texts dating as far back as 6 months before the incident occurred that showed Heather telling Tommy that she wanted him to have her mother murdered in exchange for a share in the fortune that was going to be left behind for Heather after her mom was gone. Heather had a trust fund that her father had left behind for her that she would have access to when and only when she turned 21. But it appeared that she had other plans in mind, and that her plan was to get her hands on the money before she turned 21, because again, she's still only 18 years old at this time, and the fastest way that she can get her hands on that money is for it to not be in her mother's possession. So she would have to get rid of Sheila in order to get her hands on this trust fund. Now, from the texts that were on Tommy's phone, it appeared that he was right on board. He actually bragged to his cousin, who is a man named Robert Bibbs. Tommy had sent text messages to him, brainstorming ideas, letting him know, like, yeah, I'm trying to get paid, I'm trying to cash out, and I got to figure out a way to do this that I can get away with. And the two of them were brainstorming ideas of ways that they could make it look like a terrible accident, which is insane. And so they were talking about that between the two of them, and then Tommy and Heather were talking about when it was going to happen. And when Tommy landed in Bali, Heather started with the text messages right away, trying to figure out when he would be able to do it, and telling him to hurry up and come on and to just bring something heavy to knock her out with. And the texts were just over the top incriminating. There was absolutely no way of talking around it or working around this. And after the text messages stopped, Tommy is seen on hotel CCTV walking from his suite to Sheila and Heather's suite. There was no movement outside of their room for a while, but the next time there is movement outside of Sheila's hotel suite, Tommy and Heather were emerging with the silver suitcase. So with this striking evidence against them, the couple's stories started to change very quickly, and Tommy played the victim from beginning. He said that Heather manipulated him, that this was all her idea, that she set him up, and that he only did it because Heather promised him $11 million. Like, he was trying to take absolutely no responsibility for his role in this, and he was putting it all on Heather. Heather, on the other hand, went into her normal mode of manipulate. It's like the switch just turned on when she realized the police were on to them. Manipulate, the little switch went off, and she started telling police this elaborate story of how she was just trying to have a good vacation with her mom and her boyfriend, and when he got there, the two wanted to surprise Sheila and tell her about the pregnancy. When the two of them told Sheila about the pregnancy, Sheila just lost it and went off her rocker and actually tried to attack Tommy. That's the story now that Heather was telling police, which we know couldn't really make sense because Sheila knew about the pregnancy before they even left for Bali. But Heather ran with the story, saying that Sheila went to strangle Tommy and was looking for a knife in the hotel room, and Tommy got angry and just reacted and hit her upside the head with a fruit bowl and just kept hitting her to get her off of him, and basically that this was all started by Sheila. So Heather said that it wasn't premeditated, but once it had started, it became partially premeditated, she said, which doesn't really make sense. But essentially, like, once it started happening, she didn't feel bad for her mom, so she didn't try to stop it. And the reasoning that she gave that she didn't feel bad for what was happening to Sheila was that she grew up in an abusive household at the hands of her mother. She concocted the story that Sheila was an alcoholic, that Sheila would be not only to her but also to her father when he was alive, that Sheila was just this awful person and made Heather's life a living hell for all of the years that they lived together. All these elaborate claims that Heather was making, everything that she was saying was totally unsubstantiated. I mean, there were years and years and years of records worth of police coming out to their house and literally saving Sheila from her own daughter. And in none of the police reports did it ever mention that Heather was suffering at the hands of her mother. And there was absolutely no one in their lives that could corroborate this. Sheila's friends all say that she never was a heavy drinker. Her siblings say the same exact thing. So it seemed like this was literally something that Heather just made up on a whim. The FBI actually helped Bali police with the case because it was involving American citizens, and a panel of 3 Bali judges actually found Heather and Tommy guilty of murder and conspiracy to commit murder, and the 2 of them were sentenced, Heather to 10 years and Tommy to 18 years in prison in Bali, and Heather would have to spend her pregnancy in prison. But the judges felt that based on the DNA evidence, the camera footage, I mean, the back and forth lies and testimonies that the 2 of them made, and the text messages that just basically made them look as guilty as they possibly could, the judges really felt like everything was stacked against them. There was no way that they could possibly be innocent here, so they were unequivocally guilty. Now, even though Heather was sent to prison, most people really didn't feel like the punishment matched the crime. Prisons in Bali are very different than the United States. Let's start there. So Heather had access to many of the things that she would have in the free world. She had the privilege of her daughter living with her for the first 2 years of her daughter's life. Her daughter's name is Stella. She was able to have her cell phone. She had full access to social media. She was able to text and call whenever she pleased. She was recorded, I mean, dancing, singing, living her best life with sunglasses on. And she would post on social media and post videos, and it was just very like strange that this is what prison was like. It was like she was still on vacation still. And one of Sheila's friends actually said that it didn't seem like a murder. It seemed like a deletion. Like Heather and Tommy got rid of Sheila like they wanted to, and then they were able to pretty much just continue their lives. Like there was no real consequence in the way that there would be if this trial happened in the United States. And Heather's attitude has been disturbingly blithe throughout this entire thing. She has done interviews where she's laughing and joking about what happened and sticking her tongue out and just taking everything very lightheartedly and seeming like she doesn't really feel any remorse at all for what happened. Almost like she's famous and she's eating it up. Like she's performing on stage for people when she does interviews and talks about what happened, because this is like her moment to shine. That's the way that it comes off. After spending the first 2 years of her life with Heather, Stella was taken away and went to live with an Indonesian foster family. Now, while in prison, Heather does something that just makes the situation so much more frustrating, because it was totally unnecessary and just seems like she's twisting the knife for people who care about Sheila. So she posted a video online of her saying that she was sorry for Tommy, that she felt bad, that she dragged him into this, that he really is innocent in all of this, and that she came up with the whole thing and that he shouldn't have to be in prison. But in addition to this, she also said that she really did not feel bad still to this day. Time had passed and she still didn't feel bad for what happened to Sheila, and that she was pretty content with the decision that she made to end her mother's life. And the reason that she went on record to say that she was not feeling bad about it was because, according to her, when her mom and her dad went out on vacation in Greece when her father passed away when Heather was 10 years old, Heather claims that Sheila actually killed James. That he didn't die of a pulmonary embolism, that he passed away because Sheila killed him. And because of that, Heather harbored all of this animosity and hatred for her mother, and a totally unsubstantiated claim, right? There are absolutely no grounds for this. And Sheila's friend, actually, his name is Elliot Jacobson. He's a very nice man. He's done a lot of interviews. He actually said that he has like the coroner's report of James after he had passed away, and it was confirmed that he did in fact die of a pulmonary embolism. So this was another one of Heather's like masterminded manipulation tactics to make everybody really see Sheila as the villain. And I don't know that it was working, but it doesn't seem like it was, because it was never like, woe is me, and I feel bad for what happened, but like it was none of that. It was her blaming her mom, blame shifting everything, but also just having this really vindictive and manipulative and nasty personality. So it was coming off as ingenuine. But after serving 7 years and 2 months of her 10-year sentence, Heather was released from prison on good behavior, and she was due to be deported back to the United States. She got time to spend with her daughter during this interim period, and she pretty much was just waiting for all of her paperwork to be completed after she got released from prison so that she could get on a flight and come back to the US. So after 4 days had passed, Heather hopped on a flight and made her way back to Chicago. Now, while she was en route, the U.S. Attorney's Office got word of her impending return, and she actually was greeted at the airport, O'Hare International Airport in Illinois. She was greeted by police who immediately arrested her and took her into custody. To her surprise, Heather was now being charged by the United States government with conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Because of this, Stella was taken away from her again and placed with a guardian. Now, according to Heather's attorney, this arrest should never have happened, and essentially, Heather served her sentence in Bali. She went through the legal process and got her sentence and served it, and that should be it. But there is a sealed indictment from 2017 for Heather, basically a conspiracy that took place on U.S. soil that she now has to pay for, essentially. Like, all of the conspiring that happened before they went to Bali happened while they were in the United States. And because of that, she's going to have to do time. Now, I don't know exactly, they haven't released a lot of information about it, but we know that Heather pled not guilty, but she's still being held in custody at this time. That happened in November of 2021. You may be wondering about Tommy. Since his sentence was longer, nearly double the sentence that Heather received, he's still serving his time in Bali. His mother says that he's not doing well. She says that he calls home pretty much like once a week, and he's had tuberculosis, he's had heart problems, he's had all of these issues, and apparently he's just not doing very well in the Bali prison system. But it appears that he will be there for a good chunk of more time. But of course, our main concern is 6-year-old baby Stella. Stella, like I said, has been placed with a legal guardian, and Tommy's mother is named Kia Walker. Kia is actually fighting for custody of Stella. She believes that Stella should spend the rest of her life with family and be in a loving household, and she shouldn't have any more years taken away from her living in the system with foster parents when she has living, breathing blood relatives right in the area, and she feels very strongly about that. My main concern would be what kind of access would Tommy have once he gets out of prison, and what type of access would Heather have when she gets out of prison to this baby girl Stella. Clearly, the two of them are a very big concern when spending time with a child, even though Heather was allowed to spend time, and Tommy too, while they were in prison with Stella when she was an infant. It still seems to me to be something of concern. Kia has done a handful of interviews speaking out about how she feels strongly that she should have custody of Stella. And a lot of people aren't sold on the idea also because she victimizes her son a lot. She talks about Tommy this and Tommy that, and he deserves better, and the United States needs to save him from the Bali prison system. And she just made some comments that seemed to be insensitive given the gravity of what he did. Now, from a mother's perspective, I would imagine that she will always forgive her son, which I guess, I don't know. I'm not a mom, so I can't relate. But it seems like, you know, most mothers would forgive their children, but still hold them accountable kind of idea. But she's not really holding him accountable. Like when she does interviews, when she's supposed to be talking about Stella, the conversation always shifts back to her son and like her somehow making him the victim. I suppose it's a hard thing to go on national television and, you know, kind of speak out against your own child. But a lot of people feel like the emotional maturity isn't quite there, where she hasn't made that connection of, okay, I can still love you and forgive you, but hold you accountable. And how would that translate to her then raising Stella and then possibly having Stella be around Tommy and Heather in the future? That's what a lot of people are thinking. So yeah, pretty much that's the status of that right now. Stella, as far as we know, is still in the custody of a legal guardian. Sheila's friends and family have come forward many times to speak about how heartbroken that they are and how they always knew that Heather was a devious child and had her ways about her, but they never could have imagined it ending like this. And the downplaying and the parading around that Heather has done since this happened has made things so much harder for them than it ever had to be. Sheila's sister says that she has never been able to look at a suitcase without thinking about what happened to her sister. She never looks at a suitcase the same. Tell me what you guys think about this case. Heather, I'm interested to see what her sentencing is like in the United States. She's definitely gonna have a different time in the United States prison system, that's for certain. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this case. This one was pretty well known, so some of you may have thoughts about it already. I had been wanting to cover it on my channel for a little while. Yeah, I'm glad I could bring that to you today. I hope you're having a wonderful week, and I hope you're doing well and you're staying healthy out here. But wait, I forgot to say, they did all of this for nothing. They did all of this for nothing. The whole point was to get money. The whole point was to get the fortune that Heather promised. She promised Tommy $11 million, but she only had $1 million in her trust fund, so she lied to him anyway. But they did all this for nothing because I don't even know where the trust fund is, but I would imagine they're not getting it. You guys have been hitting me up on Instagram. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Even if I don't always respond right away, I do see your messages and your recommendations. I want you guys to know that I carefully look at every single case recommendation very carefully. It is impossible. It is physically impossible for me to cover every single story that is recommended, but I don't want you guys to not recommend them to me. Even if you recommend a couple and I am not able to cover it, I will always look into it at the very least, and I really appreciate you guys' feedback. And a lot of you are new to my channel, so shout out to you guys. It's really exciting to have you. Every time I open the app and I see that I have more subscribers, I'm like, I don't know what they see in me. I've struggled with imposter syndrome, I think, in like other facets of my life, like my career. I got to a management role and I kind of like struggle with imposter syndrome, feeling like I made it to the table, but I didn't necessarily think I deserved to be at the table kind of thing. And I feel like I'm dealing with imposter syndrome right now. So to give you guys a little bit of context, if you care, there's no more to the case. So if you care to keep listening to me talk, just keep listening. Everybody else, you can go. I'll see you next week. I started a YouTube channel in high school actually, and I would make like makeup videos and just miscellaneous type videos that I could record on like my iPhone 3. When I was in college, I actually continued that YouTube channel, but eventually I just got kind of tired of it and I stopped. I think I had like 100 subscribers. And then I started a new YouTube channel where I actually was talking a lot about veganism. And then I discovered that I could put my love and kind of like fascination for true crime into a tangible form and really enjoy it. And for a lot of time, I was feeling kind of lost, was never feeling like I had that hobby that I was like, yeah, I look forward to doing that all the time. But I have that now. And it's so awesome because it's not just something that I do in my dark closet and hide away for no one in the world to see. You guys get to see my hobby in real time. Like you get to see my face. You get to see all of the research that I've done, and you get to see my editing afterwards. It's really surreal. I don't even know. It's just hard to explain. It's really hard to explain, but imposter syndrome is real. But if you feel an imposter syndrome or you want to start a YouTube channel, girl, do it. You can do anything in this life as long as you are consistent. But I don't know how this turned into a motivational speech. I would like to thank you for joining me today, for spending your time with me, and for just, hanging out. Make sure you subscribe if you want. If not, that's cool too. You can just come and hang out every week, because I see that like 60% of y'all aren't subscribed. It's cool, no hard feelings. Also, if you do have any case suggestions, remember that you can find me on Instagram at sunnyshade.v. I take all suggestions in my DMs. Yes, you can reach me directly if you want. Feel free to hit me up anytime and let me know what cases you have in mind. But I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope you have a wonderful morning or afternoon or evening, depending on what time it is when you watch this video. You know what I'm gonna say? If you made it this far, you are loyal. You really are, and I appreciate you. Write something down that you want to accomplish this week and get it done, and I'll make sure I do the same. I hope you guys come and hang out with me again next week, and I'm just glad to have you here. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.